Okay, so this is Judy Timon, Chair of the Newburyport Affordable Housing Trust, April 1st meeting. And we have trust members Karen Weiner and Madeline Nash and myself, along with Caitlin Sullivan and Andy Port.
Judy,
And
the mayor just logged in too.
and Mayor Donna Holliday. So item number 1, we're going to get started.
And Lou is here also. Thank you.
Oh, good. So Tiffany is here from Pettingill. Mancucci is here from Minco. So why don't we get started with item number 1, which is the general rental assistance program discussion. So I'll let Tiffany give us an overview.
She may not realize she's muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if I could unmute myself. So I had passed along the report a few days ago. I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to look at it. To date, we have assisted 25 Newburyport residents that have been affected by COVID. And so to date, rental assistance has been provided just under 70,000, so 69,241. We currently have 6 pending applications. We are either awaiting paperwork from the residents themselves or the landlord. I'm waiting for that landlord verification form. There is one that has been pending for a while, and we are just, the landlord is in the process of updating the rental lease with the tenant. So we just want to make sure that is in place before moving forward with assistance. And let's see, we have one new applicant from last time we spoke. So, I mean, overall, I think things are going well. The feedback that we've received is, again, residents are just so thankful that this program has been available to provide this relief, not only financial relief, but the emotional relief that is stabilizing families. Families have said, like, no, we've only needed like, one month's rent. I know that some of the stimulus money has come out, so some have been able to pay their arrearages. Others have needed more assistance with rent because they're behind in every single area of their life, car, utilities. So really looking at the full picture. And like I said before, we have multiple sources of funding. So, using all streams of fund to really stabilize these families. So no one is displaced or in financial stress. So that's a little snapshot.
So you did answer one of my questions, which was pending applications. So you said there were 6 pending applications. So it's still going well with applying for RAFT funding?
Yes, we have been constantly in touch with them and encouraging, all of the residents to apply for RAFT, and communicating with our contact there through email, like what's the status. The feedback that we're getting more recently is that applications are being approved quite quickly. as opposed to a few months ago that it was pretty laborsome and a wait, and, you know, and if that 30 days went by, then the application was kind of null and void. So things are improving.
Good. Excellent. Excellent.
Well, it sounds, Tiffany, like the program is successful in responding to local need. I don't hear you saying there are problems that we need to like tweak the program so that we can be more responsive, or there are families that are falling through the cracks, that somehow or other, you know, we're not able to respond with our funds. Is that correct?
I haven't heard of any families. I mean, I think we've done a really good job of providing the PR and outreach and, you know, communicating with schools, communicating with Newburyport Youth Services, communicating with our other partners, to really get the word out there. There may be some families that have fallen through the cracks, maybe because of language barriers. We have had several Portuguese-speaking families contact us, and we've got interpreter services involved to assist the families, not only with Newburyport rental assistance, but also with raft applications. So, you know, we'll continue to provide our outreach to our community partners in Newburyport and Greater Newburyport to let them know that this is Newburyport rental assistance available for Newburyport residents.
So
but I haven't heard like, oh, I didn't know this was available. I think that, you know, some families haven't utilized it from the beginning because they were, you know, maybe making ends meet. And then we've had some feedback that unemployment has had some kind of blips along the way of people having to renew, and then the identification has slowed things up. So just system barriers that, you know, they maybe didn't apply, you know, months ago, but they're applying now because I think they don't want to be evicted because the moratorium is lifted, and that fear of if I am behind. But not as far as a lack of communication, that the program is available.
So it sounds like the activity has been pretty consistent. I mean, it looks like the activity's been pretty consistent.
Yep. I think at the beginning it took a little while. I think just at the beginning, just with everything really service delivery, and I think that people were just really isolated. It was hard to get documentation.
Yeah.
You know, people were just afraid to kind of go out and, you know, and technology was difficult. So things are, you know, kind of freeing up a little bit. So things are more streamlined and in place. So.
Excellent.
Well, I guess we're hoping that COVID is going to be dissipating and the economy is going to be stabilizing, and, you know, maybe we won't, you know, if we end up committing all the funds that we've put into the program, we may not need to recreate this or refund it, but only time will tell, right?
Right. Yeah, so in part of like the self-sufficiency piece is really trying to get people re-engaged with maybe new employment because their businesses has downsized. You know, some of it was because of the remote learning, but now that, you know, that's opening up and kids are getting back into school more full-time. So so looking at creative solutions about getting residents back to work, you know, childcare, getting that in place again. And so Time will tell, but I mean, I've heard, there's going to be funding in childcare, there's going to be, additional funding with housing. So I think one of the big barriers is just not more so with COVID, but it's more affordable housing. And I think landlords being afraid to rent just because of, their own stability and being able to pay their own mortgage and rent. So, and the market's values are going up. So.
Okay, so any other questions for Tiffany about the general assistance program?
Yes, thank you again for doing this, Tiffany. It sounds like it's really been helpful for a lot of people.
I would just like to add to that, to what Karen just said, Tiffany. I can't thank you enough. When we had started talking about how we could step up as a trust and be able to do something for the community, I mean, you're right, it did take a little bit to launch this program, but I think the fact that 25 residents, families have been supported and we've spent almost 70 grand, that's, I'm really, really pleased, and 6 pending applications and 1 new application. And, I would also welcome additional conversation with Pettingill House, regarding the potential of other needs that, not necessarily through the trust, but knowing that there is ARA funding coming. And if there's, I don't know, conversations that we should have about affordable housing that we might be able to help and support, or other programs, certainly would be willing to have that conversation once we have a little more direction about this new stimulus package and how the funds are going to be dispersed and what they, we don't have a lot of direction at this point, other than knowing that, approximately $5 million we anticipate is coming to Newburyport over 2 payments. So certainly if there's money there that we can be used to help support some additional programs for those in need, I think that's a really good use of the money and why it was, designed. And, but there are additional pockets too that we all have to be watching, because not only is the money coming to Newburyport, but there is $8 billion coming to the state, which is, we've been told by Senator Warren, we had a meeting with the mayors on Friday, that there's going to be a lot of different buckets that this money is going to be dispersed in. And so we have to be poised and ready if there's other programs and needs in our broader Newburyport community that we could tap into. So thank you, Tiffany. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Halifax.
Yeah, thank you.
And what I can do too, because I know that we've received some email and feedback, and it's always nice to share and to really hear the voices of the residents, because it is the Affordable Housing Trust that is, putting the money forward to really help stabilize these families and not displace them, and keep them part of the Newburyport community. So I'll put some of those together and share with you for the next meeting.
Good, great, that'd be great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so item number 2 is the emergency rental assistance program. And just to kind of start that off, Tiffany and Caitlin and I had a discussion, and we talked about the fact that we haven't specified exactly the way we do in the down payment assistance program. We have an amount that we award to each applicant. We have a maximum amount, and I don't think we set the maximum amount for this program. The other thing that I thought of is we haven't set any guidelines in terms of assets that the applicant would have. And, I don't know if we want to do that. The other thing we talked about, and Tiffany did bring this up, was the fact that providing the security deposit would be problematic because of the issues with having to put a security deposit, you know, in a specific bank account and all the regulations around around security deposits. So those are just some of the things that, you know, looking at my notes from that meeting, that we talked about. So we do have Lou here, and also Caitlin did have some conversations with the property manager at Minco since our last meeting. About timing and what they're going to be requiring as far as down payments. So I don't know, Caitlin, if you want to start off.
Sure. Thank you, Judy. Yeah, so Judy and Tiffany and I met a couple of weeks ago to talk about how we can kind of piggyback off of how we set up the emergency rental assistance program and how we kind of can adapt a new program kind of geared towards helping, I guess specifically, first off, some of the tenants going into the new Newburyport crossing development, and how we can set up kind of our guidelines and application in the same way that we did for the emergency rental assistance program. And talking about things such as what would the asset limit be the same? Would the maximum dollar amount be the same? Would we want to do, you know, security deposit and first month's rent, which is what is required upfront for the Minco project? And I did have a quick conversation with the property manager, and he was mentioning how they are having move-ins from April 1st to June. And then the mayor and Andy and I did a walkthrough last week. And we had a good conversation with Lou and also Karen Palestrino from Minco. And he had a good idea that I thought I would ask him to bring up if he wouldn't mind. And Lou, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I apologize. For some reason, I don't have a camera on my phone, but are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. So Caitlin had asked me about the rental assistance for security deposits, and kind of putting my former hat on. I was once an executive director of a housing authority in the 70s for 13 years. And when I was there at the housing authority, it was always about leverage. You know, we always had too few federal and state monies to deal with. And so it was always a way of looking to leverage the funding we had to try to do more and more. One of the suggestions I had suggested to Andy and Caitlin was that if, in fact, we had an affordable tenant who required some assistance on a security deposit, that we would be in a position to, well, first of all security deposits, assuming people have good credit, is $1,000. So even if the rent were $1,500, it's not 1 month, it's just $1,000. But I suggested to Caitlin that we would be willing to take just a letter of some, you know, guarantee from the trust that said we would on behalf of a tenant that qualifies under your program, in the event of a default by that tenant, and the security deposit were to be called upon, that at that point in time you would post the security deposit. And I had a long conversation with the management company today, and it's probably about 20% of all the monies that are put into escrow that tends to be called upon because the tenant was delinquent or caused some damages on the move out. So it's rarely that we keep anything much more than 25% of total security deposits. Now, I just want to step back one bit. If assuming a person's got good credit, it's $1,000. If their credit is not so good, it's a 1 full month security. And if they have really bad credit, it's a security deposit in the last month. So on a scale, it varies on a scale anywhere from $1,000 to 2 months rent. I would say over 50% of the people would qualify in the very good category, and the majority of the remainder probably would require 1 month security deposit, and then the most risky group would be a last month's rent and a security. So I also suggested to Caitlin, it's probably important that a tenant have some skin in the game. So if we have a tenant that has reasonably good credit and it's $1,000 security, if they themselves were to post, say, 25% or $250, and then the trust fund would stand behind the other $750 if it should be needed. It wouldn't require a lot of funding by the trust fund to maybe stretch out the number of security deposits that they could provide, not only for my tenants, but for the other, the broader Newburyport community as a whole. I'm assuming that other landlords would agree to it. I know we would agree to it if that was something that made sense from your standpoint.
You mean agree to the promissory note?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but a promissory note say that, okay, we have a qualified affordable tenant. They have to post 1,000. They put up 250. You just give us a letter saying, in the event, and that's going to be 1 out of 4, in the event that that there needs to be additional security above and beyond the 250. Say there's $400 or $500 worth of damage, you'd post the 750. We'd take the 150 and send you back the 500.
Yeah.
And if you did that on a town-wide basis, I think whatever money you have, you could really expand upon the number of security deposits you could provide with the same amount of money.
Yeah. No.
So just by way, I'll just give you this little update because we're really proud of what's happening at Newburyport Crossing. To date, we just got our occupancy as of today, April 1st. But we have 9 accepted applications, 1 studio, 3 1-bedrooms, 4 2-bedrooms, and 1 3-bedroom. So we have 9. We have 10 more that we're still processing applications for. But we have nine people committed.
And this is as a result of the lottery, correct?
That is correct. The lottery was, I can't remember exactly, but probably around January. We went through the application process. We had open public informational meetings, and applications were received. Somewhere close to 50 applications, and we're still receiving applications. We have 19 units, and kind of to refresh everybody's memory, we have 4 studios in total, 6 1-bedrooms, 8 2-bedrooms, 2 3-bedrooms, for a total of 19 units.
Well, that's great to hear, Lou, and I'm intrigued by the idea of, I wondered how we would handle something like a security deposit if we wanted to help people out, because I'd hate to see the trust put a lot of money out and then you don't get it back until, who knows when.
Right.
And I do agree with some skin in the game too. So I think that's an interesting proposal.
Yeah, and the skin in the game is maybe under certain circumstances could be waived, or you could require it over, if it's 250, 5 months at $50 a month. There's other ways you could do it, but I think everybody is prepared to pay up to first month's security and last month's deposit. I think that's what people are prepared to do if necessary. So that to go back to them and say, hey, it's $1,000 and it's $250, and the city will support you on the balance. Now, it doesn't mean to say that, you know, and I would prefer that it be read that if the security deposit, they're posting 250, they're obligated up to the 1,000, but only if they default and don't, let's say the move out was 350 and they weren't willing to come up with the other $100, that only then would we go back and ask the trust fund for the $100. Chances are we wouldn't be asking for $100. That'd probably be more trouble than it's worth. But if it was $750, we'd probably ask for that kind of money posting.
Right. So, I mean, so we could put a, we could do it as a percentage. Even we could say we provide up to 75%.
Yeah, you could do that. Yep. You provide up to 75%. You wouldn't pay me anything, obviously, or any other landlord. And you just give them a note, promissory note that you'd pay if the tenant didn't pay. So it'd still be the obligation of the tenant. So they get the skin in the game has to be the $250 that they're out of pocket, and then the obligation that they owe the rest.
Right.
And if they skip out on a landlord, you know, I might be more sympathetic than most, but you know, if you're doing it townwide and there's a landlord that may not be in a position to, you know, fund, you know, needs that security deposit for whatever reason, you know, then he would be able to rely upon going to you and getting the money.
Right.
Yeah, I am wondering a little bit about how that would be communicated to the tenant so that that's clear, you know,
Right.
that it's, you know, the $1,000 or whatever it is the security deposit, and, you know, hopefully there won't be any damage or whatever, but if there is, that's still their
Yeah,
obligation.
You're
Yeah.
fully obligated, and right now you're putting $2,000 down. I mean, I'm sorry, $250 down now, but you're obligated for the balance.
Right. But
And-
where
and
where
they
this
don't-
helps you is you don't have to have the money up front, which is what I think
Right.
is so hard for so many people.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mean, and I, you know, I don't even know if, well, no, I guess they would have to know that the city is providing the balance of the funds. Because we'd have to tell them about the program, obviously, so that they would understand it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and you would have your own guidelines to decide who would be in need of this requirement, right? So if somebody may qualify for a unit and have good credit and only needs to post 1,000, and they have some money in the bank and they can afford to post a whole 10,
Right.
you know.
Right, that's something that we do have to decide if there's, you know, asset limitations that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. That's your internal kind of discussion and
Right.
guideline setting.
Right,
And I guess all I'm willing to say is that I'm willing to work with a program that you decide. And if it's, you know, you say, well, we want 50% skin in the game. Well, that's fine with me. I think there should be, you know, I wouldn't want to see much less than 25%. But, you know, I'd be willing to accept your promissory note. In other words.
right. Okay. Good.
And just to clarify for my memory of this, and then Tiffany, so if whatever kind of guidelines we put into place, Pettingill, we would contract with Pettingill to kind of figure out whether the tenant qualifies. Is that right?
Well, oh, I see. You mean
Or would
qualified.
you do that with each? Yeah, I guess for the qualifying, would this be something we give all tenants? Would this be something, you know, under certain income, certain assets, you know, and if there are criteria, then someone needs to figure out whether they qualify. And I don't know if that would be done by your property managers, you know, as they're.
We can do that if you'd like. I mean, you just give us the guidelines and I can tell you that application process is, fairly thorough. When somebody applies, we do a credit check. We do a national sex offender registry search. Then we do a rental history search. And then we do a search that's required by the federal government to make sure that it's not foreign money or money laundering or anything of that nature, kind of the stuff that you deal with at the banks these days. So they have those 4 kind of requirements that get fed into a computer, and it's an outside agency that does that, and it comes back with a rating, either an A rating, a B, C rating, a C, D rating, or we would not accept the person because of whatever reason. And they so we could then ask them, if you want to apply for the rental assistance program, fill out an application, and the application would be you can't have more than, I don't know, $30,000 in the bank. I'm just throwing a number out. I don't know what's appropriate. And if they're an affordable tenant, it seems to me that their income probably qualifies. Although our limit is 80% of median. I don't know if you wanted it at something less to qualify. But we could, if it was a simple process, we could handle it in-house, the screening, because we do end up getting a tremendous amount of information from every tenant who applies.
And that would save them from a 2-step process, I suppose, if it was able to be done once.
Yeah. Now, bear in mind that it's conceivable that if the tenant has, for whatever reason, has had, we would need a bad, rating for some reason, then we would require a full last month and security deposit. And say that's $3,000, they'd have to post 25, and you'd have to give us a promissory note for the balance if that's something that you would feel comfortable with.
I guess we need to talk among ourselves too about the ratings. I don't know, people have low ratings for different reasons, and if they have a low rating for lack of income, but we think it sounds like they'd be a good tenant, we may not be as concerned if they have a low rating. Oops. For some other, reason. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know
that's
how that works, but yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean, sometimes people have a bad credit history because they lost their job through no fault of their own, maybe even because of COVID, although I think they've made some arrangements for that. But they could have, astronomical medical bills that they can't get from under.
Right.
Or they went through, there was an abusive relationship and they went through a divorce, and both parties, suffered the consequences on their credit report. So that's something that we wouldn't want to screen. That would be something that, those aren't kind of the questions that we ask.
Sure.
And that would be the type of thing that Pettingill
The Pettingill
could
could
help with us with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be frankly, we don't manage our own property. We hire a third party, the Dobin companies. They manage 18,000 properties, and so they have a lot of experience in kind of more high-end luxury housing, although they have dealt with a lot of 40Bs, but they're not as in tune or maybe as aware of some of the potential issues that people have as Pettingill would.
Right. Yeah.
Let me just ask you a quick question. So if it's not for an affordable unit, do you charge first, last month?
No, we charge the same. If it's $1,000 and one month's rent, or full last and security deposit. Obviously, it's lower if it's an affordable unit than if it's, you know, if it's full month's rent or full rent in the last month. But that's standard.
Wait, say that again, Lou. So you charge the first and
Every-
last?
Everybody is standard, whether you're an affordable or you're a market rate unit. Everybody has to be treated identical, fair housing laws and so forth.
Right.
So if I had a friend that came in and it'd be hard for me to say to him, okay, I'm gonna rent you an apartment for $300 less than normal. You can't, it's really hard to do it because of fair housing laws. If you own a 2-family, you could do it, or even a 4. There's exemptions for that. But on a project like ours, everything is very standard. So everybody's got $1,000, whether they're a market or an affordable, a full month security deposit if they have, you know, iffy, not iffy, but little less than A credit. And then a full month security deposit and the last month's rent if they have kind of marginal credit. Anything lower than marginal credit, we wouldn't accept them.
Yep.
And I shouldn't say credit, it's rating, because keep in mind we check for their, you know, whether a sex offender or their rental history. If they have great credit, but you know, when we check their rental history, they trash their last 2 apartments, you know, that would obviously go against them. Or if they don't have a clean bill of health regarding money, the way they handle their money in accordance with the Treasury guidelines, we wouldn't be able, that would affect their ratings. So it's not a pure score like a house score. If you got 720, you get the best rate. In the rental, it's a combination of a bunch of other things. And so you get an A, B, C, or D rating.
So let me ask you again about your schedule. You said you've accepted 9, and so what's the time frame for when people have to provide their security deposits once their application's been accepted?
Well, you know, by the time they move in on the affordables, we would need their security deposit. We may be asking them for sooner, but if you're asking me, can I wait? Yes. I can't tell you if any of these 9 people that have accepted, if there's a security problem issue. I mean, right now, nobody's aware of it. So I couldn't honestly say that we've turned anybody down because they haven't been able to arrange their security deposit. Yeah. I mean, and there may have been some people that may not have applied because, you know,
That's the other thing. Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to come up with a, you know, last month and my last month's rent and security deposit.
Right.
You know, if they get marginal credit.
Right. Right.
Right. To me, part of the benefit of the program would be for people who may be interested to know that this exists so that they could afford it, you know?
Yeah. And if you have this if you roll this program out, because right now there's no more lottery necessary and no more application process. Somebody walks into our office looking for, because they, you know, the word's out on the street, we have affordable units. We would encourage them to apply and then say, hey, and if they say, oh, no, I don't know, maybe too rich, or maybe we tell them right out front. And there is this program, assuming you qualify, that you could also apply for.
Yep. Yep.
Well, my thought is whether you do it with me or other landlords throughout the city, you could stretch a fair amount of money, I think, a long way by this guarantee process.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think the intent was to establish it as a program for anyone who's renting within within the city, yes.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. I mean, my tenants may need less assistance than some citywide. So I'm not necessarily advocating it for my project. I know we'll lease up.
Right.
I mentioned it, Caitlin, because I kind of saw it as an opportunity to, when you give security deposits that could amount to $2,000 or $3,000, and you give 10 of them, that's 20,000 sitting in some bank account doing nothing. You know, when in fact you could be putting that money to work doing something else, and standing behind it, and maybe putting 5,000 in reserves. I mean, if you were to do like an insurance company, they would do an actuarial of what's going to happen and say, you know, we figure we'll have 25% default, so we'll put a reserve of 5,000 and not tie 20 up. And in your situation, you know, you got like, I don't know, you probably have the full faith and credit of the city behind you. And I know when I was at the Housing Authority, we had the feds of the state. You kind of kick the can down the road a little bit. And, you know, if in 2 years you found as though you had a little bit of overwhelming amount of payments that you would have to pay out, you know, maybe this COVID relief that comes up in 6 months or a year, you're able to get some funding for that and backstop it. If you started the program today, I can't even imagine anybody really calling upon you for 6 months at the very earliest, but more than likely within a year, right? So people sign a 1-year lease. At the end of the year, they're either behind or they broke something, and that's when you'd start hearing the phone ringing from a landlord.
Right, right.
Lou, do you have another property that's permitted? Is that correct? That will be developed?
Yeah, you mean at 3 Boston Way? Yes, we do.
And what's the time schedule for that?
Well, we spoke to the building inspector today, and we're going in for a foundation permit in next week. We hope to start that by July 1st, just start it, and probably 2 years later, it'll be finished, like Newburyport Crossing. And that's another 20 units coming online. And as you're aware, you know, all the units, there'll be 160 between the two buildings, and all 160 will count towards your housing inventory.
Right.
And I know the goal is to provide housing, not just try to meet a number. But the state has categorized all rental housing as affordable housing, and to be able to rent an apartment, even a market rate at $2,500 or $2,000, depending, and $1,699 for a studio, is a lot better than paying the going rate in Newburyport today, which is probably anywhere from 600,000 plus, right, on up to who knows the number,
Right.
and having to come up with a $150,000 down payment.
That is true.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but
Yeah. So, yeah, we definitely need more affordable and market rate rental units. That's for sure.
yeah, the key to, you know, from a developer's perspective, everything that's gone on, this really restricting housing growth and building has really helped developers a little bit, because, you know, there's no competition. But it was funny when so 1974 was the first year I was the executive director of the Housing Authority. The next following year, I was interviewed by the newspaper, and I still have the article. And they said, we have a housing crisis. So this is 1974, 75. There's a housing crisis. And they said, what are you going to do about it? I said, there's a limited amount that housing authorities can really do. Is the onus is not really on housing authorities. It's on the community, you know, and in this community, and not the end of it. We've just changed the zoning to allow no multifamily housing. And they've increased lot sizes from 10,000 square foot to 1 acre, and then 2 acres out country. So what they've created was urban sprawl, chewed up all the open space, and made housing so that, you know, a typical house was $1 million+ eventually. And they're looking to the housing authority to solve the problem, but it's the community with their zoning and restrictive zoning and that creates the problem. So smart growth that I think that Newburyport's adopted around the train station, man, that's a classic example of smart growth. You know, condensed housing and near mass transit.
Right.
But you know,
You're
Yeah.
preaching to the choir, Lou.
I was gonna say amen.
I guess since you can't see me, I'll have to tell you that I'm a lot older than most of you, and so nothing has changed since 1974, right? Nothing has changed. Communities are still making it ever more difficult to create housing, any
Yes.
kind of housing, which continues to push it up.
Yes.
Although Newburyport was progressive with the 40R, I have to give them a lot of credit. The mayor and the city council deserve a lot of credit for, you know, embracing that. A lot of people are still concerned about school children and all the same horror stories you hear over and over again that never materialize, traffic. But
Yeah, we're lucky to have it, that's for sure.
yeah.
All right, well, good.
Great.
Thank you, Lou. It's very helpful.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for all your good work. And
Thank
however I can help you, you know, I'm happy to do so. And pretty soon we'll have a ribbon cutting at One Boston Way, and hopefully with COVID behind us a little bit, in 3-4 months, you'll be able to attend.
Wow, an in-person ribbon, not a Zoom one. That's exciting.
Yeah, in person. And by the way, if your group would like to tour the building at any time, see the affordable units, see the market rate units, which are all identical, happy to arrange that.
Oh, great, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. If I'm not needed, I'm gonna sign off. Right?
Thank you, Lou. This is the mayor. I just wanted to thank you for all you've done. And I am really, really impressed with the development, and this is so needed in our city. I'm incredibly grateful. Appreciate the time on Monday for the tour, and look forward to supporting the next development that will, again, add to the much needed affordable housing stock in this city. So thank you, Lou. Appreciate it greatly.
Okay, well, thank you and your administration for all your help. Honestly, it would never, ever have happened without your support. And it was a long haul, but well worth it.
I know, I remember, and I was hoping you wouldn't walk away from the state with all the hoops they kept putting you through. And
Yeah.
anyway, it was a long process, but we're here and we're close to the ribbon cutting. The units look wonderful. The building is great. So it's all good. So
Yeah.
thank you, Lou. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that I thought it was really interesting. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing, but the Department of Local Services just issued a very, very detailed guidance about how the CPA funds can be used to support affordable housing and rental assistance, et cetera, et cetera. It just dropped in my mailbox as I was signing off today. So I will send that out to all of you tomorrow, because I really fully support, I brought this up before, could we do rental, security deposits to help people get into units? And I think from what you have mentioned that we're sort of on the right track, because one of the things I did quickly scan was the fact that if you are going to do a program like this with CPA funds, you need a nonprofit to help administer the funds. And we have that with Pettingill House. So I think we've got sort of the initial stages, but I just want to be sure that if we move forward with a program like this, which I would really love us to, that we are making sure that we're following all the state requirements regarding the use of CPA funds. But I was pleased to see that there seems to be more flexibility than I think we all thought initially. So I will send that out to you, push that out to all of you tomorrow.
Good, good. So, so what do you guys think? I mean, we don't, I don't know, we don't have a lot of time to decide what our parameters are going to be. Do we want to decide them tonight? Do we want to continue it to the next meeting, to the May meeting? I think, again, we've got to decide whether we want to set an applicant, a limit, an upper limit. Do we want to set?
You mean an asset limit, Judy?
Yeah, well, the asset limit and also the application amount, because I'm just thinking in terms of the down payment assistance program, we have a maximum amount that the person can apply for.
But it sounds like if we're talking about this particular property, Boston Crossing, is that what it's called?
Boston Way, One Boston Way.
Boston, sorry. It doesn't sound like we're talking about a lot of money.
Right, it doesn't actually, no.
I mean, when we first started talking about this, for some reason, I thought we were, up against like first, last, and security, and thinking that that was such a huge hurdle for folks.
Right.
But it sounds like it's less than that, although I'm still a little confused, because I guess, it sort of depends on their credit score and this screening process. So, there's variables that set how much a household might have to put down. But it sounds like it's something like $1,000 and the last month's rent might be the standard. Is that what your takeaway is?
And first one too, I was confused by that too. It sounded like if you're the highest rating, you
As in
don't have to
best.
put as much, right? Yeah.
So,
It might be
But can
good
I
to
ask
get
a
this in
question?
writing from
Wasn't-
him.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was Madeline or Karen, but didn't someone check and that there was an issue with us using CPA funds for rental assistance? Didn't we have this conversation?
Well, we were thinking about it, Donna, using home funds with Kevin.
Oh,
Hurley,
okay.
And we
Yeah.
learned that we need a unit inspection, and I just think the home program funds come with a lot of restrictions and reporting.
Right.
I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it, but
Yeah, that was an issue that came up
with.
with Kevin Hurley.
Yeah.
Right. So how about can I just make a suggestion? Because I think this is really an important program. And I think it's clear that, from our tour on Monday, it seemed like they're not really having a lot of trouble renting these units. But could we do a little subcommittee, maybe with, Caitlin and one other or two other trust members who could review the regs with the state to be sure that we're using CPA funds appropriately as we move forward? Because I believe that we'd have to make it more of a universal program than just earmarked for One Boston Way. That's my only concern, is that we couldn't just set this up for One Boston Way.
right, and yeah, I don't think that was our intention. No, we didn't want to.
I thought we wanted to limit it to income restricted units, to deed restricted
not
units,
just any.
rather than
Yes.
across any kind of rental unit in the city.
Right,
And so that's a very limited universe, which I am a little concerned about. It's, there are not that many deed restricted rental units in the city, right?
well, are we that? So that's a good question. Are we limiting it to deed restricted units, or are we talking about someone who, as a household, qualifies by income and they're not going into a deed restricted unit?
Those are just two very
That need
different.
help.
I guess, well, my concern
Right.
is that I thought we were talking about just affordable units, deed restricted, because if we open it up, or at least I would say at least to start, because if we open it up, that could be a huge,
Right.
that could be a huge expense that, I have felt we've been trying to save our money to help with actual development of some units. I think the rental assistance is very important, but I'd hate to sort of use all our income for that.
And,
I agree.
and if we
I-
limit it, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I agree with Karen. I think that, we could end up being in, because there is equity that has to be in terms of what other program that is there. And, again, I think we ventured into this new program with Pettingill for rental assistance, and it's been incredibly, it was slow kicking off, but, I think the fact that we've been able to support 25 residents or families is really significant. And, I'd like us to, at least make sure that whatever program we set up is appropriate use of CPA funds, because the last thing we want to do is be challenged by residents. And we know that in other communities in particular, the CPA has been challenged, for how it's been used. So I think we need to just, even if we need to bring in legal to work with us for, around what we're trying to set up to ensure that we're following the letter of the law that is available to this, affordable trust in terms of bringing in legal consultation around this. But I just want to be sure whatever we set up is something that, will be there going forward, because I believe that this, as housing prices are off the charts in Newburyport, that we have to find a way to develop a program that will be long-term to support residents in need. So I would suggest that we do maybe a subcommittee with Caitlin and someone else who can sort of explore this requirement, the new advisory that came out from Division of Local Services today, consult with legal, and then why don't we regroup in a couple weeks? I don't know if we can wait a month, considering how fast things are moving with Minko, and just get together maybe the third week in April or something, after we have a chance to sort of ensure that between legal and the DLS advisory that we're doing everything we can to set up this program according to state law.
I think that's a good idea. I'm curious, what other deed restricted, income restricted rental housing do we have in the city? I'm sorry. I mean, I'm thinking of
I guess
deed
you're right. I'm
restricted
thinking ownership.
units.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
But rental housing, I'm trying to think of
We don't
where.
have any.
Right.
Where?
Yeah, it's just the
Where?
housing authority, which is not an issue. So
Right.
that's.
Right.
so
Any of the Y properties, are those, I guess that's.
Yeah,
not-
I mean, the
Yeah.
YW, they have, the 10 units on Market Street.
And there will be 10 units eventually with David Hall's project, right?
Right. Right.
But
And-
they're short $400,000 in order to complete their project. No surprise there. So we agreed that we would. We were contacted by Congressman Moulton and asked that the new earmarks, which aren't earmarks, they're like CPMs or CMPs, or they have a new title for federal earmarks, and these new grants that are new bills that are dropping from the federal level. And so they asked us to put together our highest priorities for capital projects for the city for earmarks. And the first one we did was the Central Waterfront and Bulkhead, and number 2 was John Feenan's program for affordable housing. And we could have done another probably 8 projects, but I really felt that, housing is really significant in terms of what's happening in the city. So he's definitely short money in terms of being able to move this forward. And I'm not sure how we can help him with that, but anyway,
Well,
we don't have a lot of
totally agree.
rentals. We don't have a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah,
rentals.
that's true.
We have the units that the housing trust the Newburyport Affordable Housing Trust had developed and the Housing Authority has taken over. Would they count?
They could, but yes. But again, they're all based on income, right? So that I don't think they'd need our help. But I don't know. I guess we'd have to bring Tracy in to have another conversation with her
I
about
think
that.
they might have project-based vouchers. So maybe those
Okay.
tenants, those units are protected in that regard. I'm just thinking it may be a very limited universe, and that helps us to sort of think through the parameters some, but part of the goal perhaps is that we're hoping to have more of this,
Right,
and that this is
right.
sort of setting up something as more affordable rental units are developed so that we can respond, because it's a little bit, we're a little bit behind with this first property that's coming online with Minicucci, but the next one will be better prepared for.
And
Yeah,
just remember, there's still raft. I mean, it's not like the state, in fact, there's a lot more dollars in raft now. So there are resources for tenants on the private market. I'm not saying it's enough, but although it doesn't cover between 50 and 80%, which is kind of interesting. And that would be another place for us to focus, I suppose.
I was thinking we were going to use the money regardless of whether the unit was on the inventory or not, that if the
Oh,
household qualified, that we would use the money for qualified households. And that's where, Pitt and Gill could come in terms of doing all the income qualifications. Just because, we're trying to help and keep anybody, in the community. Anybody who's renting even a market rate unit is essentially an affordable housing person, even if the unit's not on the inventory. I mean, we talk about having to, you know, reserve our funds for creating units, but we haven't created a unit since we've been around, and it's been over 10 years.
Oh,
didn't
no, no. I
Yeah.
mean, didn't we do one with the property under the bridge next to Mr. India? Didn't we create one there and help him? Didn't we?
One unit.
All right, so there's one.
One unit in 10 years. What are we saving our money?
Well,
for?
I guess I'd look at something like the Brown School, if that were to happen in some way that, our funds could help subsidize that.
But there's also that's another major conversation, but I think that right now there's people who are hurting and there's more that we can do. And, we have the opportunity with the CPA funds that we get an influx of money every year. Not that we want to deplete what we have, but I think that we should, I really feel strongly about any help that we can support for I'm also thinking particularly about seniors, who are struggling, want to downsize, and how can we work to support them, in terms of getting them into additional rental units that, I don't know, I think we can do more, and I think you're right. I think, Judy, your comment is well taken. So we've done one unit, and since we've been, established, I think we can do more. You're right.
Do we have any sense of what the scope would be if we were to open this up to all rental units in the city? I mean, I don't know how many rental units there are, or how popular that would be. It depends on the parameters too, I guess.
Didn't our housing production plan identify the number of rental units?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pitiful.
Dated now, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's pretty pitiful.
Yeah.
So, I honestly don't think that there's, a tremendous amount of rental units, but, even looking at asset limits, I mean, I think we really need to design a program to support this, especially with another 80 plus units coming on board. And I agree with, I'm not sure if it was Madeline who made the comment about why does it have to be rental assistance only for those who are in the affordable units? What about others who are trying to get into a rental assistance? And could we help them with, if it's only $1,000, a security deposit to get into? It sounds like Lou's not doing first, last month's rent and security like a lot of rental units do. But I guess it's going to take us more than a couple weeks to kind of set up this program, but at least maybe we could come up with some parameters for Minco in terms of the affordable units, because that at least is within the parameter of what we do, but maybe we could, sort of figure out, I don't know if anyone else is doing this across the state. Does
I
anyone
was gonna
know?
say, maybe, I wonder if MHP could offer us any assistance with this. Others are doing this. Rather than us sitting here and kind of reinventing the wheel, if there's others who've done it.
And maybe as we look at that advisory from Division of Local Services, oftentimes they give you links, and maybe there's other communities we could talk to who have already set this up and could. So maybe Caitlin, we could assign you with that task of sort of exploring if other communities have set up this kind of program to support affordable housing rentals.
Yep, we'll do, and also review the CPA guidance that you are going to send tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can set up, a small working group and, loop Tiffany in too, since she'll be the one, administering it, just so she's kind of in the loop the whole way through.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Sounds like
I
a
think-
place to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've, it's a lot to take on right now, but I think that looking at where does RAFT not meet the need? As Karen was saying, the households between 50% and 80% AMI, maybe that's something. And as new rental units are being built, which, we're not going to see a lot of that, but, helping people with first, last, and security, if that's required. And then, those are just two sort of focal points, because it does seem like if RAFT is there, then that's where people should go, but maybe RAFT isn't always going to meet the need. So Tiffany should be able to help us quantify or, figure that out.
And RAFT was traditionally sort of homelessness prevention. It wasn't, things have changed so that it's this money up front, but I don't know how long that will last.
Okay, good. All right. All right, anything else on that item?
I hear Donna's idea of setting up a little subcommittee, but I'm hesitant to volunteer, frankly, just because I feel I got too much on my plate.
Me as well, but I'm happy to review things.
Yeah, me too. Especially Caitlin.
I understand, and I certainly am like out straight these days, especially as we're in the middle of budget season and trying to, get our FY22 budget together, as well as a zillion other things. But maybe Caitlin can at least review these guidelines, and maybe they won't seem as onerous as we think, and can put some bullet points together for the trust and talk about maybe reach out to a couple other communities and give us some direction so that we can sort of weigh in on that and then sort of step back and figure out where we are. And then at that point, maybe we need a quick, maybe all of us in a working meeting, as opposed to, to just say, okay, this is what we've lifted from other communities. This is what they're doing. This is what CPA allows us to do. This would be easy for us to set up. We've already got our nonprofit, which was one thing that seemed very clear to me in terms of it can't be, a city giving out money to people. That was, there had to be an intermediary in terms of that piece. So maybe we could move this forward pretty quickly. We'll see.
Yeah.
And we start with our deeded units. Maybe that's where we start, just to sort of pilot it, and then we can expand.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That feels more comfortable to me.
Yeah.
Okay, Caitlin, you okay with that?
Yep, I am. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, moving on.
Sounds good. Okay, so the document I sent out was in response to the overture made by the planning board. One of the items that they decided that they were going to put some energy into in terms of planning was affordable housing. So I put together this document as kind of a very high level wish list or, here's, just to start the conversation of, what's our long-term plan for creating really creating affordable housing in the city. So I just put down everything I could think of in terms of education initiatives, collaboration with the other stakeholders, zoning changes, ordinance changes. I just put it all out there, and it's up to you guys as to, how you want to proceed.
Judy, it's a interesting list and ambitious and thoughtful. Is the idea that a committee would be formed with representatives from the trust and the planning board and perhaps other boards to collaborate and look at these ideas and possibly others as a way to sort of start responding to local needs?
Yeah, I think that would be a good place to start. That's my opinion. I think that would be a good place to start. I think we need to get more education out there. We need more outreach to residents beyond, outreach to, our representatives, to the city council and to planning board members. I think we need education and outreach to residents. The other thing is, we're coming into an election year. I think this should be an election year issue. I mean, we have a mayor to elect and we have an entire city council to elect. And affordable housing is a absolute crisis situation. We all know that, and we've known it for years, and it's gotten worse and worse. And we're becoming a community where the median house price is now over $600,000. And that's up from the last time I checked, maybe a year ago, it was 550. So, and we all see it everywhere. The only people who can afford a house, if you can afford 800,000 and above, you're in. Otherwise, you're out. And we're coming off a nationwide movement of social justice. I mean, I look out my window and I see Black Lives Matter posters everywhere. And this is what Black Lives Matter means. It means social justice. And social justice means affordable housing. So people may not be able to make that connection in their minds, but so I think we need to educate them in that regard. So that's why I was thinking of a committee, and that's why I put education and outreach right at the front. Because I think this is a very, very long-term project, very long-term. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And I think, the only way to get housing prices down is supply and demand. We need hundreds and hundreds of new units in the city, literally hundreds, to bring down the price of affordable housing, period. And how are we going to do that? We're not going to do that with the Brown School.
We have attempted some community education at different times. The trust has held a couple meetings. I remember going in the library a couple of times, making, presentations, and with the city council. Judy, you've done quite a bit of that. But I think you're right. This is an ongoing thing. And I think it would be more effective if we were, broadening our base rather than it just being the trust.
Yep. Yep.
Yep, I totally agree with that. And you're right, it's an election year, and I think it'd be good to have, affordable housing questions on, in any debates and all that kind of thing, and that education's, and I think, this is a wish list, like you said, it's a very, it's a long-term list, but I think it has really, really important things on the list, and, I think that's great. What would it take to, I think you said in here something about a committee that involves city councilors and trust members and planning board members and community residents, like what is just like the city need to set that up, or how do you do that, I guess is what I'm wondering.
Well, I think we need to establish some kind of communication with the planning board, first of all. I mean, it was really their initiative.
Yeah,
Um,
which is great that they're
Yeah.
focusing on that.
Yes, so I think that's the first step, is to talk to them and see what they, what they had in mind.
And we've met with them periodically. I mean, not often, but it would be good, for our two committees to meet once in a while, sometimes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that would be a good first step.
That makes sense to me. Do you want to, is that something, Judy, you want to invite them to, or somehow or Caitlin can maybe coordinate that we could meet together to talk about this?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think that'd be a great idea to have a representative come to one of our meetings.
Sure, I can help set that up. I think the working group, I think, is Bonnie Sontag, and I think Ann Gardner volunteered to work on this. And I think, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the planning board is having kind of like a all planning kind of initiative meeting in June to go over all of these subcommittees that they wanted to form.
Yeah, that would actually be a great meeting that perhaps we could be done jointly with the Housing Trust. If you're able to, we could just repost it as joint, and that way you could talk about some of this overlap.
Yep.
That's a good idea. Yep.
Great.
Okay, let's do that.
Do you want to confirm that now, or do you want to check back and see if you're available that night and whatnot?
And remember, it's either June 16th or June 2nd. I think it was their June 16th meeting that they decided to kind of clear their schedule and just talk about their initiatives they wanted to really focus on.
Yeah, so maybe Caitlin, you can confirm that and let us
Yep.
know.
Okay.
Great.
I assume the housing element will be taken up first, and then perhaps the planning board, dealing with anything else on their list that doesn't deal with housing, they can take up afterwards.
Okay, good. Good, excellent. All right. Next, we have approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Okay.
I'm
Aye.
sorry, but Judy, you have to do a roll call vote for any remote meetings.
Oh, okay. Um,
Okay, so Madeline, your
okay,
vote?
Madeline,
I vote yes, I approve.
Karen Weiner,
Yes.
Donna Holiday,
Present, I was not here, sorry.
and Judy Time, and I vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Donna. Okay, next meeting date. So date's April 1st.
I had suggested May 20th because there's nothing on the agenda, but perhaps we can do it earlier if you would like. I believe May 6th. It's also an option.
Yep.
I agree. I think we should, given the discussion we've had tonight and the fact that, we've given Caitlin some important tasks to
Yeah.
review before, and I think that gives us enough time. That gives us a month to put this whole plan together. So to present for our next meeting. So I would suggest we meet earlier in May than later.
Okay, good, good.
Okay,
Sixth works for me.
Me
Okay.
too.
terrific.
All right.
So Karen, when we make our presentation to the CPC,
Oh, yeah, when is that?
that's like at the end of the month. I think it's on the 28th of April. We'll just wing it. It's in process. We're formulating the parameters and guidelines.
Right. Yeah, right.
Yep.
We won't be able to pitch to the CPA yet if we don't have this figured out, I suppose.
But I think
Speak
it
in
can be part of-
generalities.
But I think it can be part of the conversation, and I think the fact that the, conversations with Minko and where we're going and the
Right.
work that we've done with Pettingill, all of that should be part of the conversation. And I know Caitlin will do a great job of presenting that information on our behalf.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
I also know that Tiffany is planning to be there, so she should be there, to speak in support when
Wonderful.
that time comes.
Well, we
great.
have two requests. One is to reimburse the trust for the money that we've spent in COVID relief. And then the other is for creating this new rental assistance program that's focused on, first, last, and security or whatever to get people into rental housing.
So is there anything, Madeline, that you're talking about that could be accounted for with our existing CARES Act and stimulus money? As opposed to dipping into our trust. I mean, we still have about, I think, $600,000 from the original CARES allocation, and we have additional ARA money coming. So are there things that you believe that the trust has expended that could be potentially, I could ask our finance director if that could be reimbursed by CARES Act?
You mean
Well,
that,
that would be great. I mean, we have, like I just said, we have two requests to the CPC, and one of them is to reimburse the trust for this COVID relief program that we've been administering. with
Oh,
Ed.
okay. Yeah.
And, we put aside $100,000 for that, and we feel that the trust should be reimbursed.
I agree. No, I don't think that would be, maybe in the next round it would be, and that would give us more money to address affordable housing issues. But I think right now, from what I understand from the CARES Act, we probably would not be reimbursed for that. But okay, so that's one. What's the second one?
And then the second one is what we've been talking about with Minicucci about trying to set up,
Okay,
a program for people who are moving into rental housing.
okay. So no, not at this point. I don't see that with the current CARES Act and the real limitations of what they fund. I don't see that. I just wanted to be sure if there was anything additional funding that we could pull towards the trust.
Right.
But
That would be
I don't
great.
see- Yeah.
so Donna, would there be a possibility for the future? You're talking about the future CARES Act, the $5+ million we're going to be getting?
Potentially, we don't know yet.
Yeah, and you just haven't gotten the guidelines on that
Right.
yet.
Right. But if there's any way that we can put even, a chunk of funds towards, affordable housing, then we definitely should get prepared to be able to, put that request in. So
Good. Excellent.
keep you posted.
All right.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Are we adjourned?
So moved.
I move to adjourn. I second, whatever.
Okay, roll call.
We need a
vote,
roll
Judy.
call.
Roll call.
Yes, we do.
Madeline?
I'm seconding Karen's motion. Yes.
Yes. Karen? Yes.
Adjourn.
Done?
No, I never.
Yes.
Yes. I want to adjourn.
Yes.
All right, we're good. Have a
All right.
wonderful holiday weekend, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.